Part of our success, a lot of our success, of course, is attributable to our staff. They're very professional. Our board has been very, very supportive. And of course, this council has allowed us to have the flexibility and the creativity to do what it is that we do. Ms. Stevens herself has contributed a lot to that success when she was working for us. Her A to Z stabilization manual, if you remember that, Ms. Chairman, continues to be the standard throughout the state. So we are very thankful and grateful, and it's pedal to the metal as far as our attitude is. Unless you have questions or you want to hold them at the end, I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer, who will go through some of the production.
Thank you, Gus. Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. So I'll give an overview of our funding over this term, 2020 through to the end of 2024. Then speak a little bit about additional funding we've been able to leverage using the DTAC, and then speak a little bit about our production to date as well. As Gus mentioned, we're celebrating our 15th year as of June of this year. We're now in 15 years of service to the county and to the community, and so this is really exciting for us. So in this current DTAC round, starting from January 1 of 2020 through the end of 2024, we've received $32.5 million of DTAC funding, with $2.5 million receivable this year by the end of the year. So it's $35 million total in funding. So it averages out to about $7 million per year. Of that total received, that $35 million, $17.5 million is restricted to the county housing program, leaving exactly $17.5 million of net DTAC that's available to cover the land bank's overhead costs. To date, from January 1 of 2020 through the end of 2024, the land bank will have an expenditure of $25.7 million in overhead costs, averaging about 5.1 per year. So as a function of the county housing program, the expectation of the land bank was to use some of our cash reserves to be able to make up that difference over the CHP term and over this 5-year DTAC term. And to that end, over this time period, 2020 through 2024, we have used about $8.2 million in cash reserves to be able to make the land bank whole while still being able to participate effectively in the county housing program. I think what's important to speak to is that in that $17.5 million in net DTAC, kind of just our traditional unrestricted DTAC, what have we actually been able to leverage with that funding? So with that funding, we've actually been able to leverage about $44.2 million in outside funding. So that's about a 2.5 multiple. So for every $1 of unrestricted DTAC that we received of that $17.5 million, we've been able to get about $2.50 of other funding, outside funding, to be able to service all the needs of the community. And that breaks down in a few different kind of big categories. I'll speak to some of the big ones. The biggest one you've probably heard a lot about in the last couple of years is the Ohio Department of Development Demolition Program. We've got about $26.3 million in demolition funding that extends through the end of 25. So that's actually both the round 1 and round 2, as well as the funding that we've been able to secure for match as well. It's a pretty sizable amount of match needed. Gus mentioned the Circle East project in East Cleveland, where we're working on creating kind of a new community in partnership with the City of East Cleveland administration, creating a new neighborhood, a new gateway into the City of East Cleveland. So far, we've secured $8.8 million in funding for the Circle East project through just big grant funds. Of that is about $1.5 million from Jobs Ohio, $950,000 actually from the County Department of Development. Thank you all so much. I believe that came before council for approval. We've received $4 million in ARPA funding for that project. And then most recently in the news, you may have seen, we just recently received, we haven't received the funding yet, but it's been secured, a $2.3 million federal earmark for the project as well from Congresswoman Brown. In addition to that, those funding, there's a current program, the Ohio Department of Development Brownfield program, which is separate from the demolition program. And this time around, so there was a first round that happened last year, or 2 years ago, and the land bank received about $500,000 to do one project. We did one cleanup project. But in the second round, the most recent round, there was a little change, a tweak at the state level where land banks, county land banks, are the entity that actually has to be the applying entity and the administrator of those funds. And so tail end of last year, we submitted a proposal for over 30 projects here in Cuyahoga County, totaling over $100 million in request. Where we are so far, the program has not been announced, but what the state has been doing is kind of curing projects on that list. And so what that means is that we've submitted the proposal. The state had their questions, whatever series of questions they've had. we've been effectively able, there's like a 10-day turnaround time. Within that 10-day turnaround time, we're effectively able to answer all their questions. And then our expectation is that, assuming that those questions have been answered and the state feels comfortable that the project will move forward, those projects will be funded. So far, we've had 7 projects that are cured, so we have a reasonable expectation that they're going to be funded, and that totals $44 million in funding that could come into the county. Of that, about $7.6 million will be handled and administered directly by the land bank, meaning we are actually the owners of one particular project, the Acme site that you all may be familiar with. And then the remaining $36.7 million will be administering in partnership with other developers. Right. And then, as Gus mentioned, in addition to the Brownfield program, the Land Bank is in partnership with the Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund. While that project is certainly being directed and guided by the City of Cleveland and hoping to create 10,000 new jobs in the City of Cleveland, the Land Bank is really the administrating partner and really the financial and fiscal back office for that work. And that's over $50 million of expected funding. Now, beyond our funding, just through our production, just kind of speak to what has been our impact. And as Gus mentioned, you should have this impact document in front of you for our first 10 years. I think on page 25, there's an example of some of our economic development projects, but there's a bunch of appendix items in the back that you can look at as well. We're actually in the process of updating this right now for our 15 years. So hopefully we'll be inviting you, and you can attend later this year. We're going to have a symposium once we've completed this analysis to really understand what has been our impact in this 15 years. But just to speak to some of the production data through May 31st of 24, so in our first 15 years of service, we have acquired 14,224 properties around the county. Of that, 9,954 have been demolished. So we're closing in on that $10,000 demolition number. Based on the timeline, we anticipate that should happen this month, if not very early next month. So you should see something hopefully coming out from us, just celebrating that 10,000. And Madam Chair, I think this speaks to Gus's point. This speaks to your history.
I think I had 6,000.
Yeah, you helped set us up and got us right down that path. In addition, we've been able to save 2,696 homes through renovation. So 1,154 have gone through our internal deed and escrow program, and that's where we identify somebody out in the community, whether it's a developer or a community resident, who can identify this vacant abandoned property and bring it back to productive reuse, and we work with them during that process. We've also had 1,415 mission-aligned partner renovations. And so what that is really kind of like, when you think about the land bank, we've had historic partnership with like CDCs, Habitat for Humanity, CHN. Some of you may be familiar with the work that we do with our vulnerable populations through our special projects. Kind of all of those renovations, we kind of categorize those as mission-aligned partners. We've done 1,415. And then additionally, we've done 127 of internal modernizations. So we have, where the land bank is the developer, we're putting up our own cash, bringing a house to market, and then selling it. So we've done 127 of those with 10 currently underway. And then on the new construction side, we've been able to build 210 units of new construction. Similar to our mission-aligned partners, we've been able to transfer 173 of these to other developers, largely in the affordable space, CHN Habitat, but also some market rate as well. And then we've built and sold 37 new construction homes with 3 currently underway as well. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions you may have.
The other point as to why we're here now is, as you may know, we get audited by the state every year. It's in the statute. This year, our audit was good. We had a completely error-free audit, which is great. We've done that for 15 years. But next year, this will become a problem if we don't get it renewed, because we've had all these millions of dollars of projects going into the way past 2025. So this is a question that was and will get answered more specifically in the next audit. So you guys are doing great. Your audits are wonderful. Has the county approved your DTAC reauthorization? So that's why we're here now. We want to get in front of it early enough so that we have that in place.
Madam Chair, what is the current reserve balance at the land bank, and what is the forecast for 2024 as to whether whether expenditures will exceed revenues or the other way around, and by how much?
Madam Chair, the councilman.
Yes.
So current cash reserves is right around $5 million, hovering right around $5 million, give or take, depending what interest rates are. We expect this year, again, because of the nature of the way the CHP program forces us to self-restrict our DTAC, we do expect to have expenditures of about $2 million over. So we will see that reserve come down. At the same time, we are actively fundraising and chasing other funding opportunities, but that's just a function of the CHP program. Council members, for those who are familiar, again, with the county housing program, by having to self-restrict the DTAC, the expectation in 2019 when that program was created to go into effect into 2020 was that the land bank would essentially exhaust a large portion of the cash reserves that we had at that point in time.
Do you have restricted cash reserves still? Because at one point in time, you had $10 million in excess of $10 million in cash reserves.
Good call. We actually do have excess of $10 million in restricted cash reserves. The $5 million is fully unrestricted
I
cash
don't,
reserves.
I mean, this counts, while we love y'all, you are not broke. Because you have restricted cash reserves that are substantive.
And Madam Chair, on that point, what may the restricted cash reserves be used for?
So the restricted cash reserves are a combination of county housing program dollars that still need to be expensed, where we may have a contract in place, but the money hasn't gone out the door. Some of it is certainly for demolition match as well. And then there are a number of, a decent chunk of it is also for the Circle East project, where we have the funding already in place. It's restricted for Circle East, but this particular project hasn't happened. I think a good example of that is the infrastructure work that's going to be starting this year.
Mr. Kelly? Mr. President?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Remind me the dollar amount that the DTAC would generate for you?
Sure, Madam Chairman, to the Council President, from the beginning, we've capped it at 7 million. So the DTAC, if it were more, we would still always just get 7. So we've, had to be industrious and resourceful and always trying to like sell our properties, trying to be resourceful, because $7 million, 15 years ago is not the same as $7 million today. So we've had to work real hard to generate more revenue out of that $7 million base funding. But it's $7 million. It's capped at $7 million
Annually?
annually.
From 2025 to 2029. Okay. You mentioned earlier about a partnership with the city of Cleveland. Don't they have a Cleveland land bank, and how is theirs different from yours, and how do you partner, if at all?
In the 1970s, the legislature passed quote-unquote land bank legislation. They were all municipal land banks. Those offices, those land banks reposed within the office of the government. They competed with police and safety and all the things that go on with municipal government. But they are and they remain very passive. All they do is just bring in the property and you kind of sit on them. They don't have the all of the legislative accoutrements and authorities that county land banks have. So although we work very closely with them, like when we want to try to go into an area and do market rate housing or try to jumpstart a neighborhood, sometimes it'll be with lots that we've acquired through land bank, through tax foreclosure, and other times we'll go to the city and say, you have this little area here, a combination of 3 or 4 adjacent lots, we'd like to get them and build on them. So we work very closely with them. They're a little bit more, it's a little bit more bureaucratic in the sense only because it is government, but we work closely with them. But they don't, the city land banks throughout the state don't typically go in and start building construction and doing all that sort of thing. That's left to outside project developers, or in our case, the land bank. And the land bank is a good person to be doing that because we don't have an NOI. We don't have investors that we have to pay. Everything that we do and we get, it goes right back into the mission.
Thank you. You mentioned the demolition, and we certainly have done, I was the sponsor of $50 million worth of demolition at the county level. But I experienced something with there's a Warner Swayze project on East 55th and Carnegie. And the origin of that project was the city of Cleveland was going to demolish that building for $3 million. And the executive director at the time, Jeff Epstein, said, well, if you're going to spend $3 million to tear it down, why don't you earmark that $3 million for me, and I will find additional funding so that we might rehab it. And the city agreed, and that is a successful work in progress right now. But that very idea was kind of revolutionary for me. After $50 million of demolishing on the east side of Cleveland, East Cleveland, everywhere else, I started thinking, wow, if you're going to spend, I think I heard you say the number was $10,000, maybe on average for a property. If you're going to demolish for 10, why couldn't there be an investor who might say, if it's doable, say, hey, if you're going to spend 10, why don't you give me the 10K and let me or leverage it and get the funding to rehab the house? Just throwing that out there, is that a possibility if there were investors possible, likely, or is that something that could translate from what they did at Werner Swayze just into the residential community where we've done so much demolishing, particularly on the east side and in the city of East Cleveland?
Ricardo, you could add if you have other thoughts, but sometimes it works. But our thing is just going into residential neighborhoods where there's like little sawtooth kind of areas. It's very difficult to go into a small area with a small, one residential home and do that. We have done it, and we can do it, but sometimes the property is so bad that it doesn't pro forma for that developer, even if you give them the $10,000. I mean, part of the county housing program, for example, we give gap grants, and even that sometimes is not enough. We're trying to jumpstart a market with giving a gap grant between the appraisal and the cost of development, and even then it's hard. So usually ours is the worst of the worst. But then you have a project like, say, Fisher House. That was one that we would point to where we did that. It was a unified project. You had a developer, you had the governments, both the county and the city were in favor of it. And in that instance, I would not drop, money into something like that unless there was some redeveloper at the back end.
But
I mean,
Gus, we did do, when I was on your side of the table, we did demolish like 3 structures in order to help assembly.
But it was for the project, is all I'm saying. So we would spend money, or we would give money for a demolition, but it was part of a development in a situation like that. In other instances, there's no developer, there's no development, and you just got to clear the blight because, kids going to and from school, they have to see that. There's meth labs, there's fires, there's everything, every nasty thing goes on in some of these homes. So sometimes it works, but
So
sometimes
Gus, if there
it doesn't.
was a developer, are you saying there's a certain percentage of those houses that are being demolished that probably could be saved if there was a developer or investor?
Council President, through the chair. So what we're tracking right now against the 14,000 properties 14+ thousand properties that we've acquired, we've been able to save about 2,700 of them. So we're just shy of 20%. So essentially 1 in 5 we are able to save. To your point just now, it's possible that number could be larger if there were more developers at the table, and that would be our hope. And I think a perfect example of where we think this could work is we're entering into a partnership with the city of Cleveland as well to do some work in wards 5, 10, and 14. So within one of your council district, where our hope is to rehab 30 units, 10 per ward, to then start restabilizing the housing market and bringing properties back, back into production, with the hope that we can come in, we can show folks that there's a market there, and then we can attract those other developers. I think the issue we often run into and have been running into, certainly in this last couple years, is the houses that we're getting to now. A lot of them have been sitting for so long that they're so far gone that the spec to rehab them far outweighs what that developer could get for them. And so that's been a big challenge. But we're hoping that maybe with this pilot program with the city, we can show the development community that there is a reason to be in some of these, in our inner city neighborhoods where we have historically worked, and we can start sparking that development behind us.
I know you said the city, but who in particular are you partnering with? Is it the CDC or who are the partners for this initiative you're
So
referring to?
the initiative was spearheaded by council members Santana, Starr, and Hairston at the city level. And then the land bank will serve as basically essentially as the master developer. And then the goal would be to identify other folks who we can partner with. We understand that we probably won't be able to do all of them ourselves. And so our hope is to find other folks in the community who can partner with us.
Okay. Last, in the mission-aligned individuals that you mentioned, of your 14,000 properties, are there ones, I'm sure you have to subsidize some. I just imagine there are a large home in a residential neighborhood that's, fix it up, it would need to sell for 300,000, but could only sell for 150 or 200. You need gap funding to bring it back to, make it viable again. Are there properties, and what percentage would you say, whereas if they fixed it up, it didn't need any gap funding? If that made sense.
So to answer your question, I think there certainly have been properties that have been fixed without gap funding. I would say certainly our mission aligned partnership, particularly our special projects work with the organizations that serve vulnerable populations and Habitat for Humanity, we do subsidize those, and we have subsidized those quite a bit over the years. We participated in Habitat's first 100 home initiative at $10,000 per unit. We're participating in their current 400 home initiative just on the new construction piece at $20,000 per unit. And then we've done over 150 of those vulnerable population units of housing at an average of about $30,000 per grant funding into those. So it's of the 1,400 that have gone to mission aligned partners, I'd say maybe 25 to 30% of them have had that some type of gap funding that came through us.
So that means 70 to 75% didn't need gap funding?
Right, or they were able to fundraise for themselves, right? So like that organization may have a partnership with the city, like a CDC may be using CDBG money to fix that home, or has I know like Burn Bell Car is an example that had some philanthropic support to bring a bunch of units back online. So those organizations may be doing their own fundraising for the gap, but the gap didn't come from us.
And the reason I say that is I can see a sustainable effort of working in that world where you don't need gap funding. If you got an inventory of houses that are profitable, if some developer or investor, real estate investor just started fixing them up. And I say that as I've had this conversation with you and my wife overheard it. My wife said, there's this TV show I should watch. And it was called Bargain Block. And it was really about two real estate investors in Detroit. They said, we're going to go into Detroit, buy up about 6 or 7 houses from a real estate agent. And the real estate agent's job was to say, if you fix this house up, it'll sell for $80,000. So they buy it from their local land bank for 10 or 12. They put 20, 30 in, and then they make a profit. And they buy all of them at one time, so that as the property values went up, they already own the properties. And they would change in Detroit basically one block at a time. And they videotape the whole show, and you watch, as they renovate the house and take this dilapidated property, make it viable, have all the neighbors come out and look at the house and walk through, and then they sell it. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I've been thinking about it. And I saw it now, I've just seen it on a TV show. And that's the world where I'm talking about. Not trying to subsidize a $300,000 house amongst a bunch of $150,000 houses, and you need money to do it. And just like the last legislation we saw, we helped 12 to 13 people. But you're done after 12 to 13 people. What is sustainable? How do we live in that world that's profitable and get people to participate, become investors and developers, and again, something that's sustainable, that doesn't need money. It's not going to stop when this body runs out of money to give to the project. So it's not a question, that's just a thought.
No, definitely not, and much appreciated. I would say I can speak anecdotally. Prior to joining the land bank, I was executive director of Metro West Community Development, a CDC on the Near West Side. That had a long-standing partnership with the land bank. We were able to acquire, of those 1,400, we were able to acquire over 200 units of housing from the land bank, and then identify local developers. And most of our developers in that community, and I would venture most probably of our urban core communities, what they did is they'd rehab the home, hold it for maybe 4 or 5 years as a rental to get back some of their initial investment, and then sell it. So that while that was anecdotal to that community, I think that is an example of if you have folks who want to do that type of work, there are solutions to be able to get to that where you don't always have to subsidize a huge amount.
Appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Hearing no other questions? Is there a desire to move this forward?
I make a motion to move this to the full council.
Second.
We don't need any suspensions or anything, do we?
No, but this is, what's the source? It's DTAC, so that it can go back there immediately. Okay. I heard a first and a second. That was your voice, I heard, Mr. Kelly?
Attempted, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Hearing a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, this goes to the full body of council, and it will move expeditiously. I see that it doesn't need to be effective until 2025, is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chairman.
Okay, then we do not have to do suspension. Thank you. Staff will talk with you about the process. I think Trevor or Jonani is back there to give you guidance on what the final steps will be. Thank you again for your work on all of our behalf.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee.
Madam Clerk,
Madam Chair, there are no other items for consideration.
is there any miscellaneous business that this committee would like to bring forward? Hearing nothing, I believe we're going to move into a semi-adjournment where Mr. Schron and I will trade seats. Oh, I won't. Hey, that's even easier. We move the gavel.
I'm expeditious.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned.
Call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee. Please take the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for the Economic Development and Planning Committee meeting, Mr. Schron,
Here.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent. Ms. Stevens,
Present.
Mr. Byrne,
Here.
and let the record reflect that Council President Jones and Councilmember Miller are also in attendance.
Is there any public
You-
comment? Anyone
You have
sign
a
in?
quorum. No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
And minutes of the April 29th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at them?
Yes. I move approval.
Been moved, and the chair will second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have one item. Please read it into the record.
Resolution 2024-0192, authorizing an economic development loan to Jumpstart Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $2 million for the Jumpstart Evergreen Fund.
And I should have started this off by saying I appreciate everybody coming together because we have some common attendees on the committee. So I know that Ms. Stevens asked to put these two together, and I thought, okay, let's do it because we have at least, we have 1, 2, 3 people are on both committees. So with that, we'll move on forward. Is there anybody here to make a presentation in regards to this item that's been read in the record?
Good morning. My name is Brian Edwards. I'm with the Department of Development. Mr.
Morning,
Chair,
Brian.
thank you for the opportunity to present. What I'm presenting before the committee today is just an approval for a $2 million loan. The Jumpstart, first let me start by saying there's a proposed substitute to the resolution. It initially said Jumpstart Inc. as the borrower, but it's been corrected as the intent was to be the Jumpstart Evergreen Fund 4 LLC as the borrower.
Okay.
We did something similar.
It was a technical change that I assume economic development is in favor of, and legal is comfortable with it?
Yes.
Okay, so
Mr.
the
Chair.
chair will move to substitute as written. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of substituting the proposed substitute and replacement for the original resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposed, we now have a substitute on the record. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, what we're presenting today is a $2 million loan, which represents $2 million out of the $20 million that's being raised for this Evergreen Fund. We have Lawrence Novik here from Jumpstart Ventures, who's the Chief Services Officer, who was here to talk about the project itself. In April of 2024, Jumpstart received a $10 million allocation through the State Small Business Credit Initiative. So that $10 million piece is there. This is a one-to-one match, so the 10 million will have to be 20 million, so the county will be participating in that. There'll be $6 million from investment from Jumpstart's balance sheet into this, and then they are looking to fill the final $2 million with just high equity investors through partnerships they have with local organizations. We are looking at a 7-year term at 5.5%. It is secured by, in this case, we're looking to do the same thing we did before with the Next 2 fund, which is just put a lien on their future fund, which is capitalized enough and sufficient to cover any outstanding debt that the county currently, or Jumpstart, or any of its affiliates have with the county. We have, like we do in all cases with Jumpstart, we have success fees in place, and we monitor those on a quarterly basis to make sure that the investments are being done in the right place and the jobs being created are counted. And now I invite.
Before we get to that,
Yes.
we will reserve this time for asking questions about the project itself, and let the
Sure.
record reflect that Ms. Simon is present. Questions in regards to the project itself, the funding, the financing, the security, the interest rates, things of that nature. Yes.
So my understanding was that a portion of the funds that we are committing to will be used to encourage minority-owned businesses to participate.
That is
I didn't
correct.
hear anything about that from
Oh, I apologize. It is directly in the resolution itself as well, where that it's essential for the county in making the loan is to provide funding to minority-owned businesses, and Jumpstart is committed to emphasizing diversity in the portfolio companies, leadership team, and workforces with a direct intent to provide funding to minority-owned companies.
So was there a percentage goal? Were you looking, how many businesses are you looking to help with the larger pool? And what percentage of that is the goal?
That's
Since
an
we never
excellent-
know exactly who we're going to lend to.
Certainly. That's a great question, and I am not as well versed to answer that as our representative from Jumpstart Ventures here today, to speak to. We have the job creation component that they're not.
It's in the legislation, and therefore, will it be in the agreement with Jumpstart?
Correct, yes. We always memorialize the agreement based on the approved resolution of council.
Other questions in regards to the mechanics of the loan before we get into the actual program itself? To Ms. Stevens' question as far as mechanics, I also understood this is supposed to be a tech-based program.
Yes,
So how are we measuring that as far as, because Jumpstart's history is not necessarily just limited to tech, whereas
Of course, certainly.
this Evergreen Fund is a tech-based.
Yes.
With a component for minorities. So how?
It's
those
going
are-
to
those are
focus
two
on
different measurements,
investing
right? Yeah.
primarily in the areas of software application for businesses and healthcare and medical technology. That's the Evergreen Fund's focus. So that's the technology they'll be committing the funds to.
Okay, and we are going to be monitoring that with our dollars, I assume.
Correct. We get quarterly reports on where the money's, what companies have been invested to, how many employees work there, the demographic makeup of those employees. And in this, we'll have annual reporting from the companies that receive the capital from Jumpstart.
And similar to Ms. Stevens' question, there will be a clawback or something if they go out and invest in whatever, something other than related to these categories you've just identified, and if they do not hit the minority. What is our clawback from that?
So it all depends on the structure of the loan agreement from the standpoint of, understand?
Sorry, but you're writing the loan agreement.
Yes, understood. So the clawback provision is if there's a failure.
This is not them writing the loan agreement.
Yes.
We're writing it, and they're going to accept it.
Understood.
If they're going to take our money.
What our intent is to do is to expressly state the geographic area and have them prove best efforts to achieve those demographic goals. And we get those, like I said, on a quarterly basis. If we see something that's outside of the purview of this, and that would be, I'd have to defer to our attorneys at the point in time, whether or not that deviates from the loan agreement, whether it be a clawback or not. But we do monitor these to make sure that the money's being spent where it should be and the jobs are
Let's
being
just make this
created.
real simple.
Yeah.
Okay, geography is pretty easy to find. I think it's a piece of dirt. But these other ones are a little harder to define, so I want to make sure I understand what your definition is as we go to write this forward, because we're the ones, once we're approving it, it's out of our hands. It's
Understood.
now in the administration's hands to make sure. So what is the definition that you are looking for as far as percentages of these businesses that we anticipate, how it's going to shift into?
The way we've done it in the past, Chairman, is to say that they will use commercially reasonable best efforts to identify the people in the demographic to make investments in. There may not be certain people in certain demographics who are in certain fields, but they will use commercial best
And I get
efforts to
it,
do so.
that can be a problem with anything, if you've identified only, really four focus areas, all with high tech, and if there isn't somebody within the demographics that's doing high tech, the objective, I think you have to, you're tilting the scale towards high tech is the primary objective, with a hope that you're going to find people of the demographics to make up that model. Is that my understanding? Is that
That's my understanding of the objective, correct.
all right. Any questions based on the chairman's questions?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Miller?
So, based on the chairman's line, the county did a very extensive amount of research as part of its disparity studies, where we identified the percentage of minority and female business participation in a wide range of industry sectors. My question is whether you're going to make any use of that data in this process.
Most certainly. You know, we work with DEI all the time, and we also understand this is look at it as a multiplier effect. So not are we looking at the demographics of the owner of the entity that's being invested in, but what are the demographics of the employees that they're hiring to do these jobs as well? And that we track, and that we report on. So it's if you look beyond just the ownership of the entity, it's what's the demographic of those that fall into the the categories that we're looking to enhance.
Ms. Stevens, do you have another question following?
Yeah. So we've loaned money to them before?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
How much?
So we have provided, prior to my tenure with the county, there was, correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman Tron, there were $4 million that was paid back early with a success fee due to the success of their investment. Subsequent to that, the county provided a $2 million loan for the Next Step 2 fund, which is, I'd say, this Series B, C side of things. And then from there, we also gave a $5 million loan that was fully forgivable for matching for the Ohio Third Frontier operational services product, or operational services where they provide technical assistance to other folks as well. They're current on all their obligations with the county. They've paid back loans that have matured and are in good compliance with the existing $2 million loan for the next fund too.
And how much of that went to minority-owned or led businesses?
For the next two fund?
No, of the 11 million you just described?
Yeah. So what I can't speak to anything. I don't want to give information without having the data in front of me, but we do track that, and I can get that for you.
If you could follow up with
Of
a
course.
quick email, that
Yep.
would be great.
And like I said, we've really nailed it down with the most previous one, the next fund too, where we've set up the reporting requirements and how we track it in our system. I'm not sure that those, the language was similar with the type of reporting for the previous one. I think it was in 2016, maybe, I'm not sure, 2015, but I will certainly look and get back to you. And
Yeah,
see.
the original loans that they paid back was a transactional activity in which they invested in a company, and that company was successful. As I recall, we did a clawback, and we got our money accelerated. They actually paid us back faster than it because we had the right to do that.
Correct.
As I remember, somebody from this podium, from our chair, asked that specifically of the former chairman.
I wonder who that was.
I wonder who that-
Some obnoxious
I
person said,
remember. I
said, if you get
remember.
paid back, we want our money back faster.
I remember,
too."
Chairman, it was a great request as well, so.
And it worked out worked out well. But those were not, those were for a different purpose. That was like almost 10 years ago, as I recall. And those monies were, I think, were all Jumpstart monies. This is a brand-new fund. Evergreen, I believe, is a new fund that we'd be invested. Have we invested in the Evergreen Jumpstart piece before?
Not the Evergreen
I didn't think
piece.
so. Okay. Those were into the core the original Jumpstart organization, the early ones. This is a new program based on IT. Based. Yes. Looks like,
Yeah.
Mr. President, yeah, do you have a question too?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up on Councilman Miller's comment about the racial disparity study that we instituted. So with that study, it was evidence-based, it was scientifically based, and one of the, I guess, key tenets was that if there was a minority or African-American based industry and it was underutilized, then there was an inequality there, and inequity, a racial inequity. But if there was no African-American industry, like say in the elevator industry, there are probably only about in the neighborhood of 4 nationally. There's no inequality if you're not in the industry. You know, there's no racial inequality because there are no African-Americans on the contract. So I say that to say if you are giving loans to emerging, I guess, technology-based startup companies, and I'm just reading the language here, and it says to help them establish market traction needed for growth. Tell us about that existing minority or African-American industry that you would be targeting. What can you tell us about this existing industry that you are going to be looking to help?
Excellent question. And again, I have to defer to the presenter with Jumpstart because they have the overall scope of their objective and everything. We just know what we would like to have memorialized should this be passed.
Are they here in this room?
Correct, yes.
Yes. Feel free. Yep.
All right.
You
With
can use a lifeline.
Pleasure.
Feel free to.
Yeah, no problem. With the pleasure of Chairman, I'd like to invite.
Are there any other financial questions to be asked? Okay, let's move right into the Jumpstart to talk about the operational plan of the program.
Yep, we have the Chief Services Officer, Lauren Novick, with us today.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Lauren Novick, Chief Services Officer of Jumpstart. Good morning, Chair Schron and Chair Stevens and members of Cuyahoga County Council. Before I begin, I just want to thank you for your leadership in service to the residents of Cuyahoga County and your strong focus on nurturing economic development. Jumpstart's very proud to have a strong working relationship with Cuyahoga County, and with the Chair's permission, I will dive into the presentation, which will answer some of the questions that have been posed.
Please go. But for purposes of just for clarity, the Vice Chair on this committee is Patrick Kelly. So.
Before I begin, I just want to reference the leadership team of Jumpstart's investing side as well as Jumpstart's services side. My role at Jumpstart is as Chief Services Officer, where I oversee all the services, the free services that we provide to tech startups and small businesses. We recently appointed a new CEO, Julie Giacono, who brings a wealth of tech investment and services history with her. She served as the Chief Innovation and Venture Officer at Metro and has created a number of startups as well as served on a number of startups as well. The managing partner of our investment funds is Hardik Desai, who is a 12-year veteran at Jumpstart, has been involved in many of our notable Jumpstart deals, as well as leading the effort to focus on future investment opportunities, including the metrics that were referenced earlier to focus on minority and female populations. So this will answer a few of the total monetary questions. So our partnership with Cuyahoga County is a decade-long partnership, which we're very appreciative of. We've been able to leverage the county dollars towards our investment vehicles by matching those state funds with the Ohio Third Frontier ESP network, as well as the pre-seed capitalization program. As mentioned, the county has loaned us $9.5 million previously in loans, $4.5 million of which we've been able to repay. The current loan request in front of everybody is a $2 million loan request to Jumpstart to contribute to the capitalization of the Jumpstart Evergreen Fund 4. The county has made investments in a prior version of the Evergreen Fund, but not the current version of the Jumpstart Evergreen Fund 4, which is going to leverage state small business credit initiative dollars to build a $20 million fund. If we look at the $20 million fund, the $20 million Evergreen Fund 4 that we are actively fundraising at the moment is focused on deal flow that's generated through Jumpstart's services side of the house, where we identify clients, work with them, service them, support them, and move them towards investment. The industries that we are currently focused on in the Evergreen Fund are software, health, med tech, and advanced manufacturing is a growing industry focus for us. I'm going to mention this a few times. So out of all the investment dollars that Jumpstart has deployed historically, and we've invested $100 million over the course of the life of all of our funds, 57% of the dollars that we've invested have been in Cuyahoga County, and roughly a third of the companies that we have invested in Cuyahoga County are female or minority owned. The Evergreen Fund 4 that we are focused on today is a pre-seed fund that serves as a direct pipeline for our follow-on fund, Jumpstart Ventures Series A fund, the next fund which you've invested in previously, which is a Series A fund focus. Again, I know it's been mentioned that the county loan of $2 million continues, as it has been with the other loans, to be backed by Jumpstart assets, and it does benefit if the portfolio does well. So focusing on the structure of this $20 million fund, we look to invest an average of around $500,000 up to $1 million in about 25 to 30 companies. Again, that SSBCI commitment is the $10 million, which we are looking to match with $10 million, $6 million of which is our own balance sheet, as you can see under the match sources there. And we're targeting a close by the end of June. Roughly pre-money valuations of the companies that we look for in this pre-seed fund are about $4 million of valuation per company. Focusing on the track record a little bit more, you know, we've done, again, $100 million of investments over 20 years. We've evaluated thousands of startups. We have 100+ active companies, majority in Cuyahoga County, as I mentioned, 57%. And we leverage our relationships with institutional, corporate, and VC partners, along with our reputation within Northeast Ohio, as well as across the state, to elicit deal flow. You know, we have a large investor network that we will continue to pull from as we continue to build out the many funds that I'll be mentioning here. And we have a high success rate of returns of a 3x multiple, which I'll reference in a little bit again as well. Now, when we look at the diversity of the funds that we have and we are currently looking to raise through the SSBCI money, the Evergreen Fund is what we're focused on today in looking to match the $10 million of SSBCI funding. But I do want to focus on the Focus Fund, which we also raised SSBCI funding towards. And that Focus Fund is a fund that Jumpstart has created, which entirely must be invested towards female and minority entrepreneurs. Now, today we're here to try to match the Evergreen Fund needs, but I do want to mention the Focus Fund as an independent fund that focuses on the populations that had been asked about. So if we look at our history, in terms of our performance and our target assets that we're looking to deploy an investment in the future, you know, you kind of see the hockey curve here, where when Jumpstart first began, and we were just investing initially from 2005 to 2014, we were just investing in an Evergreen Fund. So we were just investing at the pre-seed level. When you start to see that escalation with the $40 million number beginning in 2015 through 2020, that was Jumpstart's intentional effort to create the Focus Fund, focus on minority and female entrepreneurs, and then to create a follow-on fund that would complement the Evergreen Fund. If you look at the bottom, our returns, we have a 3x multiple on investment capital in our Evergreen Fund 1, which is a top decile seed fund nationally. As we look to leverage, the timing of the SSBCI funding that we've received, we do plan to continue to push the envelope on the amount of capital that we're looking to fundraise to complement the capital that's needed in Cuyahoga County for startups, which I'll dive into a couple slides from now. And we are looking to have $240 million of assets under management by the end of 2028. So when we build out our funds, we are looking to build out our funds with the investing continuum in mind. If you see where our current funds and the Future Life Sciences Fund are, they're in the validation stage, which is a gap that's needed in the ecosystem here. But our next fund, which is where the county has loaned money previously, is that Series A fund when the companies are looking to accelerate. I do want to emphasize that when you look in that first bucket in the ideation phase, that is where all of the services that we provide free to our tech services clients reside, which allows us to build the companies towards the growth opportunities to be ready for investment from our funds as well as other pre-seed capital that's available in the region. So summarizing the metrics in our history, across all of our funds and all of our portfolio, we have 175 startups that we've invested in and $100 million that have been invested in total, 58 million of which have gone towards companies in Cuyahoga County. We've had 30+ exits. We've generated $2 billion in exit value by our portfolio and $3.8 billion in revenue and follow-on funding. Specifically, looking at Cuyahoga County, if you look on the left-hand side here, these list out volume of investments within Cuyahoga County, total dollars of investment within Cuyahoga County, the focus on the female and minority companies within Cuyahoga County, as well as the amount of capital that's been invested in female and minority entrepreneurs in Cuyahoga County. I think, there's a lot of logos up there across our portfolio, but what I do want to emphasize within our portfolio is that not only do we, take our investment thesis very, very seriously, as well as our focus on the metrics that are on the left-hand side, but a lot of our investments are very relevant for this Rust Belt region. If you look at the bottom half of the slide, there's a lot of health tech on there. Obviously, our ecosystem is strong nationally, and we do focus heavily on health tech. But if you look at the top half of the slide, there's a company, Felux, which is changing how steel is bought and sold. There's a company, Drive My Way, which is matching truck drivers and owner-operators with CDL jobs. Again, we do try to focus through our software investments, through our health tech investments, and through our advanced manufacturing investments on companies that are very, very relevant for our Rust Belt region. So if we're looking at total economic impact, if we look at, this is one way to think about it, if we look at the $58 million in Cuyahoga County that has been invested in Cuyahoga County companies, those startups have raised $2.1 billion in co-investment or follow-on investment since inception. So it just demonstrates the leverage of the dollars at the stage that we're investing in to be able to pull down the either co-investment dollars or the follow-on investment opportunities that follow. If we look at the economic impact of 2023 alone of Cuyahoga County-based tech startups, you see those metrics in terms of economic impact and labor income, federal taxes, jobs, households supported, and state and local taxes. We anticipate that the value of our portfolio will exceed $2.5 billion in economic impact in Cuyahoga County. I did include a testimonial here, and I'm not going to read it verbatim, but what I do want to emphasize in this quote from the CEO of OnStation, one of our investments, is two things that I think are critically important when we're here with an ask like today. First, that in his intro. He says, Jumpstart and their investment team move at the speed of startups. We are reacting to the investments that we make, and we understand the urgency with which capital needs to be deployed to our community. So we are very reactive to ensure that we do that efficiently and meet the needs of our startups. And then I think it's important to hear from a startup CEO that local money supporting local startups is playing a key role in their success. That is critically important to have their local investment capital sourced from local investors to help allow them to scale appropriately. So as I mentioned, we are seeking the $2 million to help drive impact. I think, to kind of put it in perspective here, our existing Cuyahoga County-based portfolio companies are probably going to be looking, based upon our estimates, for about $370 million over the next few years. And, obviously I've said that Jumpstart is looking to raise capital, but we only have about $25 million in reserves to support those tech investments that are needed, those follow-on investments from Cuyahoga County-based portfolio companies. So raising new funds ASAP is critical, and the timing of this ask is extremely relevant given the SSBCI dollars that are coming in to contribute to all our funds. Talking about the SSBCI investment across all our funds, SSBCI will be allocating $35 million in new local investment capital, which will allow us to invest. Basically, we'll be able to match that $35 million of SSBCI capital across all our funds to be able to raise $70 million in total. And assuming that we're looking to raise $100 million in total to match that 70, so raise an incremental 30 on top, we are looking to invest $57 million in Cuyahoga County, leveraging the next $100 million that we look to raise. If we raise this capital, we anticipate that Cuyahoga County startups will have more capital in the next 5 years than they did in the prior 18 years. And with that, I will take any questions.
Questions? President?
Oh, was there a committee member?
What was the sequence? Each one's pointing.
Defer to the president first.
Just to follow up on the same question. Again, the legislation says the administration's essential objective for the county in making this loan is to provide funding for minority-owned businesses. Tell us about the existing minority industry that you help to grow.
Yeah, I think, I mentioned the statistics in terms of the 1/3 of our investments have gone towards minority and female industries, but there is an intentionality in addition to which investments we're going to make in that pipeline of services that we provide to build those companies. As far as I know, on my services team, we have the only dedicated entrepreneur in residence of any of the economic development organizations that is wholly focused on building tech startups that are minority-based. The only employee, and we have taken that very seriously, which is why we continue to track those metrics. We have built out services and programming. Currently, we're running a program that is a feeder system into our investment funds as well as other capital in the region, and that program, called our Trailblazer program, is comprised on the services side of 40% female and minority. Again, there's an intentionality to what we do. We understand the realities that especially minority tech founders face in the learning curve and the difficulty in raising capital, which is why we have devoted a targeted effort to support pre-investment. That support is critical.
Are any of these companies that you showed on the slideshow minority-owned?
Yes.
African-American?
We could break it out in terms of that visual. We
Right.
can break that out and follow up if helpful.
Okay. How many would you say?
I don't know. I mean, I think that all the logos are on there. So if all the logos are on there, then 30 of those are minority and female owned. If all 92 logos are on there, I'm not sure if all 92 are, but yeah.
All right, thank you.
30%, you say?
It's roughly a third, yeah.
Okay.
30 out of 92, yeah.
Thank you.
Simon?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just a question, I think goes back to the first slide. I don't think you need to go there, but the total investment from Cuyahoga County, was it 9 something? I saw a number of
Previously?
9 million. Yes.
9.5 million.
And about roughly half has been paid back?
Well, it was 2 loans. So the first was the 4.5 million, and that's been paid back. That loan's been paid back. The second loan, it was more recent. So yes, that hasn't been paid back
So
yet.
that's just working its way through.
Yeah, and the upside that I think has been mentioned, and I'll mention as well, a lot of the upside related to the performance of the portfolio in its entirety, so like the Evergreen in its entirety, that obviously takes a while. So the upside is still available on that first 4.5. So the payment, hopefully, on the first 4.5 is not done because there's been no upside yet. But the upside in addition to the loan repayment are the 2 factors to consider in the loan. Yeah.
Okay.
So on the, excuse me.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
On the first loan, we've actually been fully paid for, but we do still have an upside even in that investment that we could still gain on a successful event, as you folks always call those things.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So when it's highly likely there will be an event at some point out of that fund, and we will seek, and we'll see some benefit from that. And this is a 7-year loan, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask the same question I asked the first time. If there should be an event within this portfolio, and it's you fully recouped your portfolio, would this then accelerate our payment?
I don't know that I can speak to the payments of the past. It sounds like we accelerated that first payment.
You did, because you did a good job. We just made the sale, the event took place, and we recouped all of our money.
Yes.
And so therefore, guess what? We put more money to work for you in getting it, so that's how this thing works.
Yeah, the intent is, once they reach that success mark, there'd be the loan retired and the bonus for, the success fee would come as well. So it would.
I'm not looking for getting all the way out to the end of 7 years. If we should achieve that
Yes, if
success.
it's
before the
achieved in
7
year
years,
3, then
would it
yes.
also accelerate our payment? And
The loan would be doing payment.
And your predecessor took the microphone and said, if we hit that, we would follow off and actually accelerate the payment too. And then
we've
the
been
good news is,
in that same manner.
you've heard us put other monies to work. We're not in the investment business. Ours is investing in people, and so the more we can get working, the better off we are. So if we can get this money back, and it does what your purpose is, so much the better if we can put it to work again.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
So the event, does that windfall come back to us in addition to the loan repayment? I was not clear about that. Do
So
we get
yes,
a
the way it's
percentage of
structured,
that?
what is due based on outstanding principal, accrued and unpaid interest, plus if they reach the success fee, there is also a bonus, I guess, just like we did with the 4.5 million. It was paid
There's
off
a
early.
percentage
Yes, so-
defined?
Yeah, we can't get equity. That's
Yeah,
not-
we can't- so we
we're not
can't get
allowed to-
equity,
We're not
but-
allowed to take equity, but we're allowed to take success fees.
We're just finalizing, it's kind of a
Okay.
double, if they double that they realize the return on investment, that doubled its value, so 40 million. We're looking at a success fee equal to 10% on any amount over the double value.
10%, okay. And then the second question, the 2 million we're looking at now, would that investment be restricted to Cuyahoga County takers?
Mr. Novak, yeah.
Yes, yeah, we're not
Only.
here to fund businesses outside of Cuyahoga County.
Only?
Yeah.
I just want that clear.
Yes, yeah, and again, we get the reports of the businesses that are invested in and where they're located.
So that's that's in the contract or the agreement with Jumpstart? How is that, how do you make sure that's going to happen?
So yes, we would memorialize it for the layperson's term, legalese. I would refer to my friends over there.
You will do
And
that?
then we'd contract that, yes.
And in the past, have we done that as well, in the past agreements for the 2 other loans?
I know for the last one we did. with
last
The
one.
next 2 fund, yes.
But this will be, so we'll look at that. Okay, okay.
Well, but Jumpstart, when you talked about the percentage of mix, does fund outside Northeastern Ohio. Just wanted.
I
want
heard
everybody to-
that. I
yeah.
know what they do. But this money, I think the chair
Oh, yeah,
would
yeah.
agree should remain, he's laughing.
I'm smiling only because you know.
There's some
the-
irony here.
Well, the irony, and you understand the irony.
Of the 20
You better
million.
than anyone. I'm not going to go down that path. We'll just leave
Okay,
the
well,
irony
this is
between
a
the two of us.
private thing, so.
Out of the 20 million, obviously, we anticipate, based on percentages, that in excess of 10 will be invested in Cuyahoga County, but we have isolated dollars in the past if that is amenable, right? Yes, sorry.
And when the report is provided, I would like to also know the percentage that of African-American businesses that are invested in. So that
For
we
sure.
can hear in real time as it happens.
For sure.
Are there any other questions for the Economic Development Department or Mr. Novick? Hearing none. The exigencies of this, can this just go through the regular 3 readings? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, no need to expedite.
Okay, great. Okay. The chair will move that this go forward back to council for a second reading.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good luck. We'd like to hear, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you,
The
council
sooner you
members.
get our money back, the more we can put it to work.
We'll do our best.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
I do.
Yeah.
Or Mr. Hurdig, if that would be okay.
Sure. The heck,
He's here.
we're all amongst friends.
Thank you. This is a follow-up to our discussion in part today about minority businesses and racial disparity study, how that's being implemented. And we talked today about Jumpstart and their commitment in the technology realm. But I wanted to know whether you've had conversations with the Mezzanine Fund and Ann Ritchie.
Yes. Thank you, Councilwoman, for the question. Both Vaughn and I have talked several times to Ann Ritchie, and we are attempting to determine if there's a fit between any of the financial products the county can offer and her need for capital. We've had several discussions about a potential loan into the mezzanine fund. So far, Ann has said that a loan into the fund is not something that would be helpful to her. We remain willing to offer that if her situation is such that a loan would be suitable for her situation.
So when you talk about a fit, is it a two-prong potential lack of a fit? One is that the mezzanine fund is looking for something other than a loan. Is that number one?
That's correct, Councilwoman.
Okay. And number two, potential lack of a fit is it doesn't fit in a bucket?
Councilwoman, if she wanted a loan, it would come in the same way as a Jumpstart loan, so that's not an issue. The issue is that up till now, she's said she's not interested in a loan.
And have we in the past, in the tenure that I've been here on this committee, I believe, given support to organizations other than in the form of a loan?
Councilwoman, only when there's specific projects, economic development projects, which are job creating. In those cases, small economic development grants have been made. For example, the freezer project in Opportunity Corridor, which is opposite from Orlando Bakery, received a $500,000 economic development grant. And there have been other situations.
How much?
500,000. Another one that comes to mind is ABB, which is several years ago, as part of an attraction campaign, it was determined to give ABB a recoverable grant to bring their new engineering company into Highland Hills.
And what's the determination of this, these factors? Is it you? Is it the different administrations? Like, you have the capability of changing the policy and being flexible, right?
Councilwoman, the Economic Development Fund is for job creation, so the common element of all of these situations has been a specific project that is in need of capital funding,
Okay.
which is related to job creation or in a few cases, job preservation. But we do not and have not made grants to capitalize funds. Again, I would note when we did the Arcturus deal, Councilman Sean, remember, we negotiated a loan, not a grant. And that has always been the way we've approached capitalizing funds up till now.
So my colleagues, the Mezzanine Fund was created here by Ann Ritchie, who's an African-American woman who specializes and devotes all her energy to minority-owned businesses, Black women, and she's been trying to work with the county for years. And, you know, when I sit here and see every loan, I know it's a loan, going to Jumpstart and technology and these same players, it's frustrating to me that I'm not seeing new faces at this podium, and really the target audience from which came that disparity study. And you get questions about this all the time, but I know that, you know, we've got to do something as a council if somehow you're hamstrung with the Economic Development Fund definition that I believe council actually acquiesced in allowing that fund to happen from casino revenue dollars, that we have the ability to shift that instead of just defaulting and saying, well, this is all we can do, this is all we do, it's a bucket. Council has this ability to come in and say, look, this isn't working necessarily how we envisioned, how we want our funds to be disseminated. So I think these questions, I appreciate your answers. You're confined by this box that I'm not sure, you know, it's been there for quite a few years.
Mr. Chair, if I might, it sounds like we created this box.
The box was
we change the
the
border?
box should be changed because we're not, you know, it's the same players, and I think Jumpstart's excellent, but they're the same player I've been watching come into this podium for technology, and they're successful, but there's other opportunities that the county's missing because of this box. And I'd like to be able to come before this committee with some thinking around this box and maybe how we can shift that a little bit. If we really care about the disparity study and racial disparity, I think we better come to the table and do something about it instead of just hearing, well, this is the box we're in, we can't move. That's all.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Simon. That is an excellent point and perspective. Is it something you've considered? And I'll just say this. As I asked my line of questioning, I didn't see a picture of an African-American business. I didn't fully hear any comment about the existing African-American industry, and don't necessarily have to go into names or anything, but sometimes empowering a community means giving those dollars directly to the community and not necessarily through an excellent entity like Jumpstart. So those are conversations that are worthy conversations. Again, that line up with the disparity study work that the administration has executed and implementing those. This certainly would fall into that area of conversation. So thank you for that, Councilwoman Simon, and it's a worthy conversation.
Council
Should be followed
President,
up.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention we will be bringing forward shortly before recess recommendation to award $4 million from the Economic Development Fund for small business support. And while I am not at liberty to state publicly the organizations receiving that funding because the contract is not completed, the entire focus that RFP was for assistance to minority-owned businesses. So there's $4 million coming before the recess that will be directed towards that goal.
And to follow on that, we've had funding for minority business standalone programs up to in the past.
Through the SBAs?
Through Small Business
Yep.
Administration?
I thought, no, through our small business program.
Okay, so SBA to me is a.
I know, okay.
I'm sorry, it's a whole different.
Our
yeah,
thing.
It's a whole different
Our thing.
organization, not part of us.
I know.
But we've done, and if you can go back and bring that forward, I think you need to make sure this body hears, and whether or not you see the funding going to a Jumpstart, at least the speaker indicated that a third of that, of the funds coming out of Jumpstart, a startup is a green company. It doesn't have the experience. Indicated a third of that was minority or female owned. So
I understand that,
so
but they're the entity that keeps receiving this money to scale up. And when you're talking about small businesses, we're not talking about, we're talking about nail salons, hair. I'm sorry, but that's where this money's been going, and that is not the level to which I think our minority community in Cuyahoga County can strive. And we're keeping that low level. Of course, we need small business funding. Of course, we need small businesses and entrepreneurs, but we also need to scale up the talent that we have here. And I don't think we've been doing that well enough, because we're just looking at small business, small. How about big? And I think that's a problem that I see, is just this vision is just, it's not as vast and as large as I think it can be for this
How
community.
about we let the Economic Development Committee, Council, actually do your homework, bring forth the numbers so we can at least see where our monies
Sure.
have gone. And let's bring the by name, by company, and even be reassuring to have, maybe bring some of those individuals who've received those funds to grab the microphone. and
great.
talk about it. I think it would be.
I think that'd be important, but it's not either or. I think that's my
Oh,
point.
no.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it either or,
Okay,
but
but
just
we
so that
should-
we can hear what were some of the organizations, who were they, who are the recipients, and, because I know that's been done, that we funded minority businesses in the past on a regular basis, I thought, from this.
That's excellent, if I might.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Chair, in addition to all of those things and all the great work that you mentioned around, this is $2 million right here that is going to, again, the essential objective is to provide funding for minority-owned companies. It's was presented to us, asked us to vote on your essential objective. So we want to see it. That's what we're saying. We want to see it. And this $2 million and whatever dollars that you have earmarked for it, we want to see the fruit of your labor.
And I'm not trying to go too much into the wordsmithing, though. There are two components of what's on here. One is for high-tech companies, and then are there minority businesses that are part of that? If they're not, that makes it the difficult challenge, I think, as Ms. Stevens brought up. If that high-tech is one of the things that we're trying to look at right now, whether that's right or wrong. I told Ms. Stevens about the Mr. High-Tech company that I'm thoroughly aware of about 12, 15 years ago, and they always hear about it from me. But if that isn't, we can object to saying, wait a minute, we should be looking at a different business other than high-tech companies. That maybe opens up a different segment.
But if I might add, Councilman and Chair, again, this says these dollars are early stage, seed stage dollars to help growth in these markets. So that implies that there is a market. So if
But we
there's a
have to
market
get
you want to
out
go,
in
and if
this
there
market
is
and
no
tell
market,
folks, because there are folks who leave this marketplace or don't stay here or don't come back because they don't think we will help them grow.
so my point is, we can't say that there is no market because you're asking for money for the market. If there's no market, then you don't need the money. If there is a market, tell us about the market. Tell us about them.
The
so that
market
we might
exists.
Help them grow.
Is the population within that market a startup company? And I would hope there would be.
But it
And there
says it
shouldn't be a
is. I
hope.
think the president's point is it
shouldn't be a
does
hope.
say.
The money is, the industry exists because you're asking for $2 million. So talk about it. Tell us who, I don't necessarily mean names, but give us.
There are ideas
Yeah.
that, because most of us are not real tech oriented, we've never thought of. I mean, when I looked at one of these companies, I just hadn't thought about a blood collection network or what was the other one that caught my eye? The truck driving recruiting piece. That's something that's basic and simple, but there's a technology mechanism to it. And so there are ideas that those of us who are very pedestrian in our perspectives of life haven't thought about the tech impact.
And I
And
know-
that's why we need to let people know this money is here.
And I know African-American truck driving companies that are doing well. Do you know them? That's what I question. Are you, tell us about what you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what this truck driver, but it's kind of like saying Uber is like a taxi company. That's really a technology company that ended up developing this into, if you ever used Uber, you know that it's a tech company. It's not a vehicle company, and ultimately. And I think that's what he was talking about as far as, this is not a truck driving company. This is a tech company that happens to use technology to help manipulate the vehicles, the way I understood his comment. It's like an Uber with a truck. How's that? Is
Right.
what my impression of what it was.
And I'm not going out to search for companies. You know them because they're asking for money for these existing
Well, they
industries.
know the industry exists. Does the company exist?
What does that mean, industry versus company?
Well,
The industry exists, the industry is made of companies, right?
no.
What do you mean by
The
that?
companies will then develop, and when the industry, if the industry is out there, will the companies come forward and create an organization and an investment? And then hopefully there will be a minority female within those companies that will want to try to service that industry.
Who
Is that
creates the
where the
industry?
stage is?
Who
Where
creates
where
the industry?
Councilman
We
Schron
do.
said
We
they
all do.
don't exist and you want to.
So,
We as consumers actually create
Mr.
the
Chairman,
industry.
Council President, members of council, very stimulating discussion. Let me sum up. I was taking notes earlier, a couple things we've committed to. Number one, we've committed to bringing forward to this committee for informational purposes a more detailed presentation of minority-owned companies that have participated in Jumpstart. And I know that information exists. I know Lauren and his team have got it. And we will work to make sure that's brought forward soon for briefing purposes.
Not just Jumpstart, the county's money too. Any county money that didn't go directly to Jumpstart to went any other path to get to the minority community too.
And if I may note, Council President, Chair, that information is in the quarterly reports we've been putting into the county's performance management system, but we can certainly pull that out and highlight that. But that's actually been part of our work with the Equity Commission, is actually highlighting that.
So Paul, what I want is not, and I'm okay with adding all the things that the chair has said, but I want to know the dollars that we may possibly approve today, how the African-American community is going to grow. That existing industry, tech industry, is going to grow as a result of these, or have the opportunity to grow through early stage seed dollars
Right.
through there. That's what I want to see. In a narrow perspective, these dollars, how they are going to impact the African-American industries and companies that are out there that you are
Understood.
working with.
Thank you, sir.
I just want two last questions. So what's the largest actual grant we've given through the Economic Development Fund? That 500,000?
So Councilwoman, never, well, unless you count Sherwin-Williams, which is kind of a special case, but that aside, 500,000 has always been the limit.
And what is the dollars in the fund now?
Councilwoman, we currently have a number of projects in the pipeline, so it's always a moving target, but we're usually in the range of having about $10 million at our disposal for an entire year, considering all the different projects we're trying to fund during a year. We have repayments coming in. We have, as council knows, council provides $3.8 million every year. But usually the working balance of the fund is on the order of 10 million or a little more.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It's been a way to finish up the meeting, and hearing nothing further, we'll adjourn the meeting, and I'll hustle up.